In late June 2023, in a quiet hotel 2 blocks off Charles Street in Baltimore, I was laying out my navy dress for the wedding brunch when my phone lit up at 12:41 a.m. It was my daughter, calling from her hotel suite across the harbor. I stared at her name, then answered. What followed wasn't a check-in or a tender, new married glow. It was bragging, graphic, giddy, and pointed at me the way only a grown child who never learned boundaries can manage. I didn't argue. I listened. I said, "You sound excited," and let the words run out. Then I set the phone face down and looked at the folded place cards for the morning. By dawn, I had decided on a very quiet correction. No shouting. No scene. Just a speakerphone, a table, and the natural weight of her own words. I remember the specific chill of hotel air at 12:41 a.m., the hum of the ice machine down the hall, and the clean, rehearsed silence of a room kept for events. The day had gone smoothly. Ceremony at the conservatory, small string quartet, vows that sounded memorized but sincere. I had done what mothers do, pinned a veil, carried water, retouched lipstick, tucked doubts under a smile. By night, I was alone with the garment bag across a chair and a city that had mostly gone to sleep. When the call came, I could already see the shape of it from a mile away. My daughter has always preferred spectacle to intimacy. "Guess what?" she said, breathless, and then she launched into it, a tour through the first hours of a marriage, as if she were giving me a status update on a renovation. She used verbs no one needs to say to their mother. I kept my voice even. "Get some rest," I said. She laughed. "Not yet." I set the phone down slowly, palm flat for a moment. Then I placed it on the desk, opened my tote, and slid out the brunch seating chart I'd made in a hurry that afternoon. I moved one place card. I made a note on the program, speaker. It was the first time in months I felt fully awake. The earliest signs weren't loud, they were cumulative. A calendar full of emergencies that weren't emergencies. Phone calls mid-workday with no regard for whether I was in a meeting. Texts about personal details that belonged with a therapist or spouse rather than a parent, not because they were lurid, but because they were designed to make me her audience. 3 years earlier, when her father remarried, she began calling me after dates to narrate them. "You should be happy I tell you everything," she said. I would try to redirect. "I don't need to know all of it," she'd laugh it off. Boundaries, to her, were a performance for other people. For me, she preferred a front-row seat without a curtain. In the months leading up to the wedding, the pattern sharpened. Dress fittings were punctuated by remarks about the wedding night that were meant to shock and entertain. "Relax, Mom," she'd say. "You're so old school." I am not old school. I'm a nurse manager who keeps things moving and keeps things private. But I learned with her to let moments pass. Silence is a tool. It wasn't working. So when the call came at 12:41 a.m., it felt like the endpoint of a line that began long before the engagement. My daughter wanted me in the bedroom with her, as witness and mirror. She wanted attention to complete the experience. It wasn't immaturity alone. It was control, the sort that dresses itself as closeness. The discovery wasn't a secret lover or a bank statement. It was the realization, clean, almost clinical, that this wasn't about joy at all. It was about using me as a prop. The clues lay everywhere. The way she turned toward me at the reception after each speech to check if I was soft enough. The way she slid her hand through her husband's arm while looking at my face, not his. Even the photographer noticed. "She keeps checking for you," he said lightly, as if it were sweet. After the call, I played back her words in my head. Not the verbs, but the edges around them. The little digs. "I guess you never had a night like this," the tone that said I was outside of life now, a tired observer, here to be fed reports of what the real people were doing. That was my proof, sharper than any printed receipt. This wasn't an accident. It was a habit. And habits are corrected by consequence, not lectures. I lay down, shoes still on, and stared at the hotel ceiling. The brunch would be 10:00 a.m., waterfront room, 72 guests, coffee already ordered. I folded the program in half. The plan had been to give a toast about steadiness, about ordinary love. By 1:05 a.m., I had a different plan, and it was perfectly simple. Preparation looked like sleep. I closed my eyes and let the late city sounds pass, a siren, a couple laughing at the elevator, the soft slam of a door. I woke at 6:10, showered, put on the navy dress, and ate the apple I'd saved from the vendor box. At 7:00, I texted the catering manager to confirm the mic check. At 8:30, I ironed the hem that had caught on a shoe buckle the night before. At 9:15, I walked to the venue and checked the seating. I moved my daughter's mother-in-law, Trisha, closer to me. I made sure the microphone was working. And then I turned my phone volume to a quiet, steady medium. I did not need to bait a call. I knew my daughter's rhythms. She would ring me before walking in to demand attention or deliver another headline. If not, I had her voicemail from the night before. At 9:54, as the early guests found their seats, I slipped the phone onto the table between the coffee carafe and the small vase of hydrangeas. I watched the door, not with dread but with a sense of finally aligning with myself. Boundaries are not announcements. They are walls you build with your hands while everyone is busy admiring the view. At 10:02 a.m. she called. The screen lit up, her new married name underneath, freshly changed. I tapped the speaker with my index finger and kept my eyes on the room. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, plain. Around me, the room calmed. Trisha sat down, reaching for the bread plate. My sister, May, looked at me and then at the phone, sensing something. My daughter began again, same tone, same show. It was almost word for word, the crescendo, the laugh, the little victory horns meant for me alone. The sound carried just enough for the nearest tables to hear clearly. Her husband's aunt, her father's college friend, the coordinator refilling water. I didn't add anything. I didn't sharpen a syllable. I let her finish and take a breath. Then I said, still on speaker, "You're on the brunch table, honey. Say good morning to your guests." A silence landed, soft and heavy. Trisha's hand stopped above the butter. My daughter inhaled, then made a small sound I had not heard from her since she was 12, the sound of a person meeting a wall they did not see. "Turn it off," she whispered. "I'm introducing you," I said evenly. "Come when you're ready." I tapped the end and slid the phone away. The room did not turn into a circus. No one shouted. I picked up my water glass. On the far side, someone coughed. Trisha put her hand on the table, steadying herself, and then nodded at me once. The coordinator met my eyes and gave the smallest raise of chin, as if to say, "Understood." The microphone check finished. The pianist played something from the night before. I stood, adjusted the hem, and gave the toast I had planned months earlier, about steadiness and ordinary love. I did not mention the call. I did not mention my daughter. I talked about quiet meals and shared errands, about folding laundry and remembering to buy the good soap. When I sat down, the room looked different. Not shocked. Just awake. They arrived 20 minutes late, subdued, hand in hand. My daughter didn't look at me. Her husband greeted the tables. He kept his eyes on the older guests, as men are taught to do. When they reached our side, she kissed my cheek and whispered, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Because I asked you many times not to involve me in your bedroom." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The world didn't tilt. The hydrangeas didn't wilt dramatically. She moved on. By afternoon, there were small shifts. She hovered near her mother-in-law instead of me. She laughed a little too loudly at neutral jokes. And when the gifts came out, she let others open the cards. The family carried on. Trisha and I shared coffee and an unremarkable roll. "Thank you," she said in a voice 1 decibel above a breath. I said, "For what?" She glanced at the door. "For teaching her we are not props." By the end of the day, I had received 3 texts from my ex-husband. What happened? Was there a scene? Call me. I didn't answer. There had been no scene. There had been a boundary put in place, gently and publicly enough that it could not be rewritten later as confusion. On the drive home, the city moved past in its usual order. I felt neither triumph nor regret. Only air, moving in and out on time. 2 weeks later, when we met for lunch, she said, "I think I went too far." I nodded and ate my salad. "You did," I said. She waited. "Are we okay?" I put my fork down, wiped my mouth, and said, "We will be if you keep our lives separate where they should be separate." She nodded twice, quickly, like a student accepting a fair grade. By autumn, the calls were ordinary again: grocery lists, work talk, a complaint about the dishwasher. She texted photos of the apartment they were painting. When intimacy came up, she paused, corrected course, and chose another topic. Once, she caught herself and said, "That's for him, not you." I said, "Thank you." Quiet corrections, layered over time, are how families get better. In October, I visited on a Sunday. There was a new plant on the sill and a candle that smelled like cedar. We ate roast chicken at the table they had bought secondhand and refinished themselves. There were still corners of her that wanted applause, but she gave it to herself now and left me out of it. When I stood to go, she hugged me and said, "I'm learning." On the drive back, I took the long way along the water. The sky was clear and small boats made lines across the harbor that disappeared behind them almost immediately. Boundaries, I thought, are just lines you don't see until you cross them. Then, if you're lucky, someone shows you the map. I rolled down the window and let the cold air make my eyes water. A soft, ordinary ache. The kind that means you're alive and finally quieter. Every story here will stir your soul. Welcome to Spice and Sugar, your daily escape into real emotions, bold lives, and unforgettable lessons. Here, it's all about love, loss, laughter, and the quiet strength that carries us through. I share stories that make you feel, that remind you you're not alone, that every bitter moment can lead to something sweet. If you want to laugh, cry, and see life through stories that heal and inspire, subscribe and stay a while.